The Erection by Jack Barratt. Lee. My name is Lee Stratton. I am a senior nurse working in a UK hospital. My story is loosely based on fact, and the names that have been used have been changed for obvious reasons. Within a hospital environment, we see some very strange and unusual things. A good deal of what we see is based on people's sexual habits and the end result of some of these acts. For example, I have seen couples stuck together by a force of vacuum after having had sex in the water, men and women with various food types stuck in their body, and many minor and sometimes major injuries after various sex acts going wrong. The worst was a death after hanging, trying to reach a higher sexual stimulation. Some of these things are funny, and some tragically are not. This story is about one of the longer-term patients who was admitted to my hospital. Found unconscious and left for dead. A single guy, badly injured and obviously someone who had been robbed, was admitted to the hospital after having been found in a street. He was badly bruised, with head injuries and bleeding, and obviously unconscious but still alive. He was taken to the accident and emergency department, where he was assessed and then admitted into the intensive care unit. Although it was unclear what had happened, it was quite obvious that this guy was going to be a guest of St. Mary's for quite some time. I heard about this man from a friend of mine. Her name is Sue Parker, and she is the ICU sister in charge. We had been friends for years, from school through to nursing training and beyond. In fact, all told, we had been pals for more than 22 years. A record by many standards, I guess. Anyway, I worked in the maternity department, and as a midwife I had seen many births and deaths. But Sue, she saw a different side of nursing, and although our jobs were similar, they were very different in many ways. Quite often we would meet and talk, and always the hospital would come into our conversation. It was, after all, a big part of our lives. Sue was recently divorced from Steve, which was all amicable. Well, sort of, no kids, so a clean break. The reason for separating was the fact that they had just grown apart and they wanted different things. In the end, they fought over the dog and the cat. In the end, she got Bimbo the cat, and Steve got Zack the Alsatian, and that was that, as they say. One night Sue came round for a coffee after work, and we chatted as usual. We talked and, as per the norm, the conversation got around to work. "We had a strange patient admitted last week," said Sue. "It was a guy who had been found unconscious in the street. He was brought to the ICU, and there he still is at the moment." "What is strange about that?" I asked. "Well," said Sue, "the guy in question has had an erection from the first night he came in, and it hasn't gone down since. So what do you think of that, Lee, my girl?" I was a bit taken aback, but I took it in my usual stride. My first response was, "Is he good looking?" "Yes, he is a bit, not a model or anything, but he does have a certain rugged charm. I have to say, though, for the first few days he looked bad, but it is only now he is starting to show signs of what looks like he would appear to be in his former life. The bruising is going down, and his cuts are starting to heal. It's the trauma that hasn't started to heal yet, and I feel it could be a long haul." We had sort of moved away from this patient as a topic of conversation when I suddenly asked, "How big is it?" "How big is what?" said Sue. "The erection," I said. "The guy's erection, how big is it?" She looked and laughed and said, "It's a whopper." We both laughed out loud. Then I said, "Define whopper." Sue said, "Imagine a large banana, but I mean large, and it will give you some idea of the size of the problem." What else could you say? We chatted for a while longer. The night got late and Sue went home. I had a quick tidy round, locked all the doors and went to bed. I was very tired and needed to sleep, but no sooner had my head hit the pillow than I woke up eyes wide open, and all I could think about was this guy and the huge erection that Sue had talked about. Nevertheless, all night long I slept soundly, but when I woke up, one thing dominated my thoughts: this guy's erection, and had I been dreaming, or had Sue really said what I thought she'd said to me? I had to see it, if for no other reason than to satisfy my curiosity. So next day I called Sue and asked if I could come up to the ICU and see it for myself. Of course she agreed, and I arranged to be there for 2:30 p.m. As I went into the ICU, it was a very strange feeling, and I was very curious and very excited at the same time. I didn't know what to expect, so I just walked onto the ward and looked for Sue. I could see her talking to another nurse, a girl I also knew but only slightly. Sue saw me and motioned me over, and off I went. We walked into a side ward. I stood behind Sue and just looked at him. The first thing I saw was a huge bulge in the center of the bedclothes, and it was obvious what it was. "Do you want to see underneath?" asked
Sample complete. Ready to continue?